Welcome to the Alchemist Egg. This is the Steven School Alchemy YouTube channel. So I'm warming up the egg. Coagulation is the goal. This is mineral alchemy in the mineral realm of alchemy. I'm going to coagulate this material and then proceed with the imbibitions. Here is the material that I am coagulating. This I'm using to do the imbibitions. Interesting. Look at that chunk of iron pyrite in there. Hello. Look at the white on it. That's interesting. Is the stone itself, the pyrite stone, turning white? That's what it looks like. Well, let me get in the camera. There we go. Look at that big chunk of iron pyrite. It's got white spots all over it. That seemed to be increasing with the dissolution, so it's interesting. Like the pyrite itself wants to turn white, which I've seen in some of my other works. In the writings of Theophrastus Paracelsus, he describes this type of alchemy as it progresses, leaving a white earth in the bottom of the glass. So I'm working with iron pyrite here, doing my dissolve and coagulate in this jar with the menstruum. My coagulation in this glass. Dissolving, doing imbibitions, coagulating. So my goal is to distill this liquid out through evaporation, coagulating this material in this glass. The material in the bottom looks white, but it seems to color the liquid, which has a yellow coloring. It's taking on a yellow color. The liquid that used to be clear. So I'm just going to let that evaporate its way down towards coagulation. I'll adjust the temperature a bit as I go. Right now it's working its way towards 100 degrees Celsius, and we'll see how that does when it reaches that temperature, and then adjust as necessary. I just want to see a steam coming out as a vapor. I'm going to leave this live stream running. This work will take a while. I will periodically check back on it. I do expect to see color changes in the glass as this work progresses. Interesting. It reminds me of Theophrastus Paracelsus. You must turn its insides outwards. And the redness is hidden within the whiteness. Interesting. That white spots on the iron pyrite are interesting to me. I don't see any steam yet, so I'm gonna turn the temperature up a bit. There, I've got it at 125. I might as well prepare my alembic to distill some water, since I've got the hot plate going. Now the water, when I'm distilling it in my alembic, of course, I put the water in here that I want to distill. It vapors over the helm into the collection receptacle, giving me the purified water, distilled water. The leftover water that is left in here, I pour it out into these beakers and evaporate it, because I'm collecting that to see what's in it, and some type of crystalline material is forming in those glasses. So I pour it off in these beakers, and then evaporate it down so I can collect it and maybe study it or test it or see what it is. Alright, here I'm setting up my alembic to distill water. And this is water that I've already distilled and collected in a 2000 ml beaker from my 2000 ml alembic, which is for improving the water. I could actually set up to do some alchemy with ashes here too. I have a little bit more room on the hot plate. Enough room for that. Alright, adjusting the temperature. Approaching 200 degrees Celsius. We'll see how that does. And adjust as necessary. Alright, I'm gonna do some alchemy with ashes while we're here. Got lots of room on this hot plate. That's mineral alchemy there with iron pyrite. This is gonna be alchemy with ashes. And in the big alembic, I am distilling water so that it's more pure, to improve the water, purifying it. And then over here, we're taking the leftover water from the alembic that did not go over the helm and coagulating it so we can study what's in it. Alright. Now this is my bonsai orange tree that I'm bringing in. And the reason that I'm bringing in my bonsai orange tree is because the tincture that I'm making with the ashes, the extract, whatever you want to call it, I'm testing it on plants, such as my bonsai orange tree here. And this is actually my favorite plant, so I hope it does well with it. I've been adding it. I don't know if it's going to be an improvement or not, but we're going to find out. I do notice a slight difference in the leaves. The tip of this leaf is a different color. Like there's a color change. We'll see how it goes. I guess we can't really see the bonsai tree very well at that angle. Perhaps I can adjust the tripod a bit. We'll just see what we got. Or maybe I can move the plant closer. There. So the coloring on my bonsai orange tree seems to have lightened up. The coloring on the leaves seems to have lightened a little bit since I gave it the first dose of the extract from the ashes. We are in the cold rainy season too, so that could have an effect on it. Probably the cold. Citrus trees I don't think they do well in the cold. So I'm basically testing the ashes tincture as plant food. Trying to adjust the zoom back down here. Okay, let me break out some of the ashes here. Wood ashes. Ashes from wood and leaves is what we have in the bowl. And we'll set that over there. And we'll take this spoon, add some in here. Alright, that is distilled water and ashes in the 600 ml beaker. Ashes from wood and leaves. This says Alchemy of Steven School. Do not try this at home. Not for consumption. Alright, mineral alchemy with iron pyrite here. Coagulating. Alchemy with ashes and distilled water here. And over here in the alembic, I'm distilling water to get the distilled water. And then in these beakers in the back over here, I'm taking the leftover water that doesn't go over the helm and coagulating it so I can study what's in it. This material is starting to move around in the glass, agitated by the heat. The yellow coloring looks slightly more pronounced. The material itself in the bottom is coagulating like a white sulfur, but it seems to be coloring the water yellow. I do expect many color changes in this mineral alchemy experiment as it progresses. That is an experiment that doesn't go quickly. It takes a lot of time. It's like it's a shortened version of the long wet path of alchemy, but it's not a short version of it. It's just shorter than the long wet path version, slightly shorter, because I'm using the hot plate instead of sunlight and the natural heat of summer, which is seasonal and slower than the hot plate. It's still working its way up towards 200 degrees Celsius. It's not there yet. The flat bottom round flask seems to have some more action going on in it. The material inside seems to be getting more agitated by the heat. It's moving around in the glass. The white sulfur type material is moving around in the liquid, which is white vinegar. Since I'm doing alchemy with ashes, I'm going to need to set up my filtration vessel. Right. Yes, multiplex. Since I'm burning electricity, I might as well use all of the surface of the hot plate for multiple experiments. And back in the days when I was heavy into researching alchemy online, old alchemical manuscripts, I remember reading that some alchemists recommended trying many experiments at the same time, and they would build furnaces. And one alchemist had written that he had 60 or more experiments going at one time. on his furnaces and sand baths and water baths. So theoretically, I could expand and do multiple alchemy experiments at one time. So this part isn't really much in the camera, but this is my filtration vessel. And I'm going to get that set up. So the first thing I'm going to do in the filtration vessel is place this reusable filter in there. And this is going to be used for my alchemy experiment with the ashes. So I've got some disposable coffee filters here. Got 7 of those. I'm going to place those inside the reusable filter for extra filtration. And I want to add a few more. Let's see how many we got here. They're a bit stuck together. That looks like 2, 3, 4, 7 and 4, 11. So I've got 11 of the paper filters inside the reusable filter. That makes 12 filters. And I'm going to add one more reusable filter. Just to kind of maintain the shape that I want in here. And that I'll use to filter my tincture of ashes and distilled water when it gets warm enough. So I've got a glass stirring rod here that I'll use to stir the ashes and water. So the tincture that I'm getting from the ashes and water, as I said earlier, I'm testing on plants as a plant food to see how it affects them. And I have a variety of things in my garden. Over there is my favorite, my Bonsai Mandarin Orange tree, which I need to prune and trim again. I'm just letting it grow wild right now. It does need to be trimmed and pruned. And I also have a grapevine that is Thompson seedless grapes. I have a bonsai lemon tree and a little bit of other stuff in the garden. I've got I planted moringa seeds because I want to grow bonsai moringa trees, but they haven't sprouted. It could be the time of year. Could be the fact that the water I watered them with is straight from the faucet. I don't think the plants like that type of water. All right. Now the egg here that has the mineral alchemy work going with iron pyrite and white vinegar, it does seem to be evaporating, distilling through evaporation, which will lead to coagulation, followed by repeated imbibitions. So we'll let that continue its work for a while. I was eating some stew earlier and accidentally got a little bit of the juice down the wrong pipe and gave me a little bit of a cough. All right, I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit more. I don't know if you can see the temperature setting on the hot plate. Let me adjust the camera a bit. So the temperature setting is down here. And it started flashing again. It was the number 200 was solid for a bit. Now it's flashing. That means that the hot plate is working its way back up to 200. This hot plate has had a lot of use. It's a high quality hot plate. These are expensive. It's a Cimarec, Thermo Scientific Cimarec. It's a good hot plate. It has seen a lot of use. Okay, I've adjusted the temperature to 220. So it's climbing towards that goal. And that is Celsius. Over here is ashes from wooden leaves with distilled water. Water that was distilled in my alembic. Dissolving to get the soluble materials. I also have aloe vera plants. And last night I started testing my extract from ashes that I made last time in a previous video. I started testing it. I watered all of my plants with it. My grapevine last night, my bonsai orange tree, my bonsai lemon tree, my aloe vera plants, everything. Just to see how it affects them. I know in old alchemical manuscripts I read a long time ago, alchemists did tests on plants to see the effect. to 20 degrees Celsius. The temperature gauge is still flashing, so it's still climbing towards that goal. And this ash is, I see changes in it. I see separation. It seems to be heating up. Some material is settling, dissolving, a separation of layers. It is getting warm. Now the tincture that I made from ashes is interesting. The test results are interesting. Of course, it took more time to get a better idea of what it's going to do for my plants. I gave my bonsai orange tree a good dose of it last night. I probably should have begun with a smaller dose. This mineral experiment over here is got changes. Look at the white sulfur type material in the bottom. It's much thicker now. It's expanded. It reminds me of the writings of Michael Syndabogius. Nourish it for twice 6 hours with a clear liquid until its limbs begin to expand and grow apace. It is expanding. In the heat. Interesting. Well, we're at 220 degrees Celsius. I'm going to turn it down a bit because the mineral experiment egg with iron pyrite is starting to reach more of a boil. And I just want it to coagulate. I think it does well in heat. But I don't want the heat to be high enough that the material actually starts coming up out of the glass. Alright, I'm going to stir my ashes, wood and leaf ashes, and distilled water. The glass stirring rod, and then I'm going to try pouring it off. Decanting the liquid into my filter. The glass is fairly warm. Right. So this material is dripping through the filters. I use a lot of filters with this because the the material is dirty and unclean, and it goes through an ancient alchemical process of fire and water, burning the material with fire and then dissolving it with water so that I can filter it. But since it's so dirty, it needs a lot of filtration to get all that stuff out, all that soot and ash, undissolved materials, solid particles that don't go through the filter. We'll let that sit and drip for a bit. My Alchemy Egg is still getting just a little bit of pinging. I believe in old alchemical manuscripts they may have called that detonation. It's possible. The dripping through is going better now. When the liquid is hot, it seems to go through the filter better. It's still steaming a little bit out of the top of the filter. But the dissolution and filtration of the ashes and distilled water seems to go better with heat. Alright, my dog wants to go outside real quick. I'm going to let her out. She'll be right back. Even though we're in the cold rainy season, I still have my sun dome outside so I can see how it works in the cold and rain. And it does seem to still work. It's just not as fast as it does in the heat of summer. My sun dome. So we can actually go take a look at the sun dome real quick and see how it's doing. I'll just take this camera out there. And that is dripping there. That's my ashes and distilled water alchemy experiment. And that's my mineral experiment with iron pyrite and vinegar in the round flask with the flat bottom. And then this alembic is simply distilling water. And it's not dripping over the helm right now. The temperature is not quite high enough. It may slowly start dripping at this temperature, but just a slightly higher would increase the distillation. I'm getting some pinging over there, so I'm going to turn that down. I've got that set at 190. We'll see how that does and adjust as necessary. And let's go check on the sun dome. Oh, there's my herb collection. Growing. So this is two jars deep. Whoop. I've got various seeds up here I'm saving. Orange seeds, lemon seeds, avocado seeds. And I've got bladderwrack powder. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the works of Dr. Sebi, but that was one of the herbs that he recommended. This is butcher's broom. And I have here Comfrey Leaf. Comfrey is interesting. If you research it, the roots of the comfrey plant go deep in the ground, getting the soluble minerals. That's what I remember from researching it. This is lemon balm, Melissa officinalis. Supposed to be the main ingredient in the Primum ENS Melissae, a famous alchemy work. So these herbs, I use them in cooking, I use them in making teas. There's the sun dome and bell. So we can see how the sun dome is doing. Stop that, bell. That's not helping. That is not helping. Alright, there's my Thompson grapevine. You can see in the winter time it's not doing well. Also, it's been watered with tap water, which I don't think is good for it, so the leaves don't look too hot. So last night I started watering it with my tincture from ashes. I want to see how that does for it. And then this is I've got a seed from a moringa tree seed in there, trying to sprout it, and another one over here, the sun dome. And over here I've got my aloe vera plants and a couple more moringa tree seeds, trying to sprout them. I do think it's the wrong time of year to sprout them. And that's my bonsai lemon tree project. It was really tall when I got it. I've cut it down and I'm going to prune it some more. I don't know if that was a good selection to make a bonsai tree with, but because it was really tall when I got it. I think it would have been better if I got it when it was short. Right. So there's the sun dome. The sun is coming up. It is coming out. So, back. I am in the midst of house cleaning. It's a work in process. A work in progress. Alright, I guess we could take a closer look at my bonsai orange tree. So this is a Mandarin Orange. The trunk or stalk or stem, whatever you want to call it, is getting kind of thick. So I actually purchased the orange tree at Home Depot and started pruning it. And when I saw it, I thought it was perfect because it was short when I got it. It wasn't tall yet. And somebody had topped it some time ago, quite some time ago. So they cut it to be short and thick and stout like that. And then the top, after you can tell after they cut it, the top split off into two main branches. Another branch started growing out of here, and I cut it off, and I got to trim it a little bit more because it's got this little piece sticking out that I don't want. So I need to get like a little handsaw blade and just carefully trim that out of there. But you can tell at one time, quite some time ago, this was topped and then split into two. The orange tree is pretty healthy. It grows quite well. Okay, so there's the tincture with ashes. The filtration went quite well. I sprinkled some of the ashes on my lawn because it has some areas that need improvement. And I think the ashes will do just that. Ashes seem to make really good plant food. Wood ashes. Alright, so I've cleaned out the reusable filter that was in the top there. And I've cleaned up the beaker. We'll place it here and let it dry a bit. I'm gonna put new filters in this. Alright, it's pinging again, so I'm going to turn the heat down. 180. Alright, new disposable coffee filters. Okay, a rough count, I'd say there's approximately 8 to 10 of them in there. Probably about 10. I've redone the filter. ashes and distilled water. The alembic is starting to drip water over the helm. It's beginning to drip. Adding distilled water to this beaker. Followed by ashes from wood, leaves, pine needles type material. Alchemy work with ashes is associated with an old alchemical term called calcination, and I do seem to be spilling the ashes here. Calcination. It's part of an old alchemical process involving fire and water, and it's also associated with fixed salt. Alright, the glass stirring rod. I think that can take a little bit more ashes. It seems kind of thin. In excess of water, we can dissolve more. I'm going to get it into a super saturated saline solution. And there goes the pinging again. So let me turn this down a bit. 165. Right. Now the tincture I'm making here with ashes and water seems to be quite thick. Or much thicker than it was. Let's take a look at the mineral alchemy experiment. There is activity going on in the glass that is generated by the heat. And there is the filtrate from the ashes in water. As I continue my alchemy experiment, I seem to be in the mood for pizza, so I think I'm just going to work on getting a pizza in the oven and get that going. Preheat. I'm gonna preheat the oven. I said at 350, but you know what? I think maybe 325. I'm just going to cover a baking sheet with aluminum foil to bake that pizza on. So these little pizzas, I like these. They're pretty good. And they don't seem to be very expensive. Just something I can get home. Here we go, one pizza going in the oven. I do not receive anything from advertising for the pizza. It's just that I'm hungry and I like that pizza. So I'm going to throw it in the oven and then I'm going to eat it. But I don't get any payment or anything for advertising it. Plugging in the charger to the phone. So I'm recording this live This live broadcast is through my cell phone. All right. So the distillation through evaporation is going well. I see steam vaporing from the glasses. The pinging seems to have stopped. The white sulfur type material in this glass seems to be thickening. And now it's pinging again since I disturbed it, of course. But not too bad. Stirring the wood and leaf ashes with the glass stirring rod in distilled water as it's being heated on the hot plate so that I can try to thoroughly dissolve any soluble salts, soluble type minerals that may be in the ashes so that I can purify, separate, filter them. There is some of the filtered liquid. Purification by water and fire. And then testing it on plants. It'd be interesting if it caused my bonsai orange tree to begin fruiting and growing oranges. That would be pretty cool. So the two beakers in the back over there are filled with water from the alembic. So I distilled water in the alembic. The distillate goes over to the helm into the receptacle. The liquid that is left down here with impurities in it, I pour into those beakers to evaporate them so I can see what I'm distilling out of my water, what I'm removing from it. And there is material in there. It looks like a crystalline type material or a salt type material. And it was soluble in the water, but the work of, I call it coction, cooking in heat, subjecting the water to heat, the material seems to precipitate or fall out of solution. It seems to separate from the water as a solid matter. Could that be an example of phase transition? Perhaps. All right, my oven's at 285 degrees 290 degrees and climbing. I'm interested in my pizza getting to the point where it's ready to eat. I do not recommend eating pizza. This is just my pizza. Do not try this at home. Not for consumption. The guardian of the door. And my dog's laying outside. She's on a leash, a 15-foot tether. She's got a 15-foot run. Later on, I'll take her to the park for a good walk. Alright, my oven has reached 325 degrees. That's lovely. My scientific hot plate is at 165 degrees Celsius. Will I stir my wood ashes in distilled water? Getting a good dissolution of soluble materials. Beakers seem to evaporate liquid much faster than the round flask. I know alchemists, in ancient times and medieval times, they seem to like in their writings, they like recommending the round flasks. This one has a flat bottom, of course. And I believe they recommend that because they figure everything's going to go down to the same spot, to the same point for a good thorough mix. But nowadays with beakers and hot plates and magnetic stirrers, I think switching to a beaker might expedite the process a bit. But since this experiment was started in this beaker, I'm gonna finish it in this glass. An interesting material is forming. So this is my mineral alchemy experiment with iron pyrite and vinegar. And this is my ashes from wood, leaves, pine needles, and distilled water. Heating it up, dissolving the soluble portions. And this is my extraction vessel with iron pyrite and vinegar to do the imbibitions in this flat bottom round flask. Alright, I think I'm gonna get these ashes and distilled water a good stir, and then go ahead and filter it. That's what I'm gonna do. Removing the glass stirring rod. Get a towel here to protect from heat, just in case. And now I'm going to pour this material through my filtration vessel. Quickly and carefully, trying not to spill it. Alright. So there's that. It's steaming and vaporing a bit. So it should start dripping pretty soon. And I would start another beaker of ashes and distilled water right now, but I do not have enough distilled water in my receptacle yet. I feel it's important that I use distilled water to remove impurities. Alchemy, part of alchemy is about purification, exaltation by purification. In my understanding of alchemy, that's very important. And the alembic was for the purpose of it was to improve the water, which is what I'm doing, distilling water. So this is dripping good now. In alchemy, I've noticed there's a symbol. Alchemists communicated through symbology. There is a symbol in alchemy I've noticed. And I didn't set up my any drawing stuff to draw the symbol, but if you research alchemy and you travel in alchemy circles, you'll probably see it. And it's basically anything that is black as a background, and then with a symbol on it of a downward triangle in the color of gold. The downward triangle in alchemy is the ancient symbol for water. Okay, so when it's on a black background like that and the downward triangle is gold, it's signifying ashes, charcoal, carbon, water dripping of a gold color. It signifies ashes and water, in my opinion. And that's dripping quite well. I'll bring it closer to this light and see if that illuminates it better. Let that drip. Alright, here we go. Dripping more. Liquid clean filtrate. So as I mentioned before, I'm testing this liquid from the wood ashes and distilled water, processed with the ancient alchemy technique of water and fire. Testing it on plants. Alright, I got a clear glass bowl here. I'm going to turn it upside down and see if I can use it as a spacer. Put it under the filtration vessel, see if I can raise it up in the air a bit to get it more visible in the camera. And apparently that roll is not tall enough to do the job. So I've got a mason jar here. We can try that. See how that does. I raised it up a bit. So this filtration vessel that I have going here is pretty interesting because normally I would order something online, but with delivery times and costs and everything, and performance, this vessel right here, in my opinion, was the better choice. I got it faster, got it cheaper, and it seems to do exactly what I want it to do. Alright, I see just a little bit of pinging in my glass. I'm going to turn the heat down by 5 degrees to 160 Celsius. And the filtration vessel is still dripping. Pizza's still baking in the oven. Check on it real quick. Doing quite well. Alright, the filtration seems to be complete. And this is what I have received. I can coagulate this down into a what I call a crystalline saltstone. Which could actually be also called a vegetable stone or a vegetable salt, a vegetable earth. For the creation of a vegetable stone, like through imbibitions, like if I were to take this liquid and coagulate it down to a salpetre saltstone type thing in the vegetable realm, and then if I wanted to further experiment with it, I could take I could pick some of my herbs over here. I could just pick one of my herbs over here and extract it to get the essence of it, and then use that liquid to do imbibitions upon the crystalline salt material from a vegetable stone, which would be interesting. And hopefully we'll progress to that over time. Hopefully I'll get to the point of making that video or those videos. This is vaporing nicely, evaporating. I've got an interesting glass vessel I'm going to go get. I've had it for quite some. And here it is. It's a glass bottle in the design of a leaf. Now, that could be a maple leaf, a Canadian maple, or is it an oak? That would be interesting to discover. I'm going to rinse it off. I don't have a stopper for it. I need one. All right, and now I've been waiting for a while to do this, to put this glass to use. Oh, the old Bible quote comes to mind. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. So this tincture I made from wood, ashes, leaf ashes, pine needle ashes. There may have been pine cones in there. There actually was some bamboo in there. Pieces and limbs from various trees that had fallen. So that's my tincture from ashes. Fitting that I have it in a leaf bottle. Now if I could find a stopper that would fit it, I probably have something somewhere. Perhaps the cap from the soy sauce. Perhaps the cap from the hot sauce. I think in the meantime, since the liquid is cool and not vaporizing, I think as a temporary covering, could probably use some plastic wrap. There we go. This is my tincture of ashes. A little pinging in the glass. I would turn the heat down to 150 degrees Celsius. I'm going to try to avoid the pinging and just coagulate through distillation of evaporation. So this is my alchemy experiment in the mineral realm with iron pyrite and white vinegar. Coagulating. I've done the experiment before, and the results were very interesting. So let's see. I bring one of these glasses up closer. Take a look at it. So this is the material that is precipitating out of my water or falling out of solution of the water during the distillation process. It appears to be some type of crystalline salt or crystalline material that was soluble in the water, but separated by heat. So I'm just evaporating it, coagulating it down to see what I've got. Whatever it is, it's being separated from my water through distillation. This is just ordinary tap water from my faucet that I put in my alembic here. And as I distill it over the helm, the distilled water goes over into the receptacle. The remaining water condenses down, and this material separates or coagulates or falls out of solution. It precipitates, if you will, into some type of crystalline type or salt type material that no longer appears to be soluble. So I'm going to collect that, maybe study it, maybe try to analyze it, maybe experiment with it, maybe try to understand it more. When I coagulate that crystalline type material, I may try to make an alchemy stone out of it. I think that would be interesting. Of course, I'll do it on YouTube. So we can see the results. I remember some years ago, I was researching and studying, and I came across a note I want to say call it an old alchemical manuscript, but it was more of a note, and it was in the possession of a famous, a well-known person, I should say, a well-known person in the alchemy circle, the circle of alchemy, the world of alchemy. It was in the possession of a well-known person who had a library of alchemical manuscripts, and there was a note included, or the heading of the note. It was like a forward of it. It was like it was said that the information came from a private library and was quite rare. That was in the private library of a rich person that was into alchemy. That the information was not well known, hadn't been like well publicized. It was rare information, and it was said to be a dry path recipe, a dry path alchemy recipe for a philosopher's stone. And it didn't exactly identify per se the ingredients by name, more like metaphor. And it called, since it was a dry path recipe, it called for two substances to be united in heat. And the fire itself was described as being that of charcoal, a charcoal fire. And it was interesting. One of the ingredients was described as a well purified salt that was melted in the heat of this charcoal fire. Interesting. It didn't name what salt it was. It just said a well purified. It said take some, perhaps take some, say perhaps well purified salt. It's been many years since I saw it, and I no longer have it, so I kind of have to try to remember how to piece the words together to get the idea across. Anyway, the old alchemy recipe, the old secret alchemy dry path recipe that I mentioned, it was interesting. It just comes to mind because of this salt here that's forming in the glass. And I'm not saying this is the salt or that this has anything to do with it, but it is a salt, so I may as well study it. Now, it's interesting because the work with the distilled water and ashes, I'm receiving two substances, a salt and a liquid. I'm not saying they go together. Who knows what that salt could be that's forming? That is tap water, not purified water. So I don't know what that element is, but it is interesting. It'd be interesting to repeat the water distillation experiment with some very well filtered well water from the mountains that has mineral content, but nothing really other than that added per se. Just good mountain water that's been well filtered, which actually mountain water I could get from a stream. I wouldn't even need a well. Okay, the alembic does seem to be distilling water over the helm at this lower temperature, just very slowly. All right. A tincture of ashes. Some type of soluble material that is no longer soluble that's precipitating out of the water that I've been distilling. And then my mineral realm alchemy experiment with iron pyrite and vinegar. Dissolve and coagulate. Fire and water. This is Alchemy of Steven School. Do not try this at home, not for consumption. I wonder if I should take the salt precipitate from the water and imbibe it with the tincture from the ashes. Now, if I did it right now, if I added it to the beaker now, that could be considered a wet path alchemy experiment. But if I bring the salt to dryness and then imbibe it, I guess that would still be a wet path experiment. I would have to to do it as a dry path experiment, I would have to bring both materials to dryness and then unite them in heat. Personally though, I don't believe this salt has any purpose in alchemy. I believe that is just impurities that I am separating from the water by distillation and evaporation. I don't believe that salt has any alchemical value. but I'm going to save it just the same. If you scroll through my videos that I uploaded on YouTube over the last few years, there should be one titled Alchemy on the Stone of the Meadows, and it should have a fire horse thumbnail image. That one describes in depth a preparation from wood, material, fire and water, ashes, dirt, preparing a salt and a solution, and then uniting them. That's Alchemy on the Stone of the Meadows. I'll try and throw an end screen link at the end of this video for the video that I'm mentioning, Alchemy and the Stone of the Meadows. Coagulating. The coagulation process in this experiment is quite lengthy. It is shortened somewhat by the use of an electric hot plate, but it's still quite lengthy. As I mentioned earlier, if I switch to the beaker, it may shorten the work a little bit more. Because this type of vessel, it's designed to get everything to go down and mix together and unite as one. But because of the shape, it seems to slow down the evaporation. So I mentioned before I have my Bonsai orange tree here, and I began testing my tincture of ashes on it, testing on plants, watering it with the tincture of ashes. I gave it some last night. I probably should have started with a smaller dose than I did, but we'll see how it progresses. All right, I think we can wrap up this live stream. The only thing I can do now is proceed with the distillation by evaporation and distillation of water. These things are very slow. It will take time. So I can cut this video and then come back at another time when there is progress to report. This is Alchemy of Steven School. Subscribe for updates. Do not try this at home. Not for consumption. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.